System in Manila remains to be among the worst in the world. That study by think tank Oliver Wyman Forum and the University of California, Berkeley pointed out the city's road network is suffering from poor quality and that it has limited connectivity to other regions. For more on this, let's now talk to AltMobility PH Director Ira Cruz. Good afternoon, Ira. Thanks again for joining us.
Hi, good afternoon, Denise. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Sadly, it's still the same topic. We talked in 2020, and you did say that there were lots of issues that the government still needs to solve. March this year, you did say that what they were lacking is the lack of urgency. How about now? How's the situation looking?
Well, first of all, you're right. When we spoke 8 months ago, the last thing you said was you're hoping that the next time we speak, it's going to be about progress and less problems. Unfortunately, yeah, we are talking about the same old problems, and there still isn't any sense of urgency on the part of government to solve this problem. It's the same old problem, as I've mentioned, and then it's the same old priority on big ticket problems rather than solutions that are needed today. Denise, there's nothing wrong with big ticket projects like the subway or MRT. It's just that it doesn't happen until 5 or 10 years later. However, meanwhile, we have problems that we've been suffering for the last couple of years. And I think that's something that the government really needs to show a sense of urgency and really address. Introducing solutions on land or road-based transportation, and even introducing proper infrastructure and policies to promote active transportation.
It's good that you brought up the subway because I was also going to bring that up, that could be a possible solution, but the estimated, the finish of that structure is still 2028 years from now, and that's causing traffic as well in the roads. So those are the long-term solutions that the government has provided. What short-term solutions could they offer in the meantime?
Denise, I think the same questions have been asked of us over and over again.
Sadly, we have to keep asking them to remind.
That's correct. And what I'm going to give you today is something a little bit more interesting than the same old question, the same old answers that we give you. I think it's time to bring out the big guns and pressure government, or in order to pressure government to act on these long overdue issues. Number one, I think it's high time for us to require our transportation officials to commute going to work. There's nothing would substitute understanding the real plight of ordinary Filipinos if they themselves are exempted from understanding and experiencing these issues. And, who knows, them being subjected to the same plight of ordinary Filipinos on a day-to-day basis would get them to have that sense of urgency to finally act on these issues. I would want to go as far as really asking government to revisit removing incentives for private vehicle support for government officials. It's very important for them to really understand. And I think that's number one. Number two, the PUVMP or the PUV modernization program has been pending for the last 3 years at the very least. Mm-hmm. And it's high time that government really act on these solutions. Denise, the problem with PUVMP is that there are legitimate issues faced by the transport sector, and there's legitimate issues faced by the government. And I don't think it's a big secret when I say that there's a certain level of mistrust or miscommunication even between the transport sector and the government. So I think the second thing is we'd like to call on DOTR and the president maybe even to host an earnest discussion between the transport sector, whether it's traditional or modern jeepney operators, government, and civil society, to sit down and discuss and address all of these issues so we can roll out the PUVMP, which is very, very critical and would really be something that we should be prioritizing on because this is problems that we're facing on today. The third one would be legislation. We've passed a draft of the Commuter Bill of Rights back in 2019. Unfortunately, it didn't pass the 18th Congress. We're refiling it. We're calling on Congress to prioritize it. But we're also starting to have conversation with some members of Congress on introducing another piece of legislation to revisit the composition of LTFRB. If you look at the current composition of the LTFRB, we are sorely lacking transport planners. We are lacking members of the civil society. We are lacking members of the transport sector in deciding on things that affect our welfare. And I think that's the third thing that I would like to put forward, something new for us to consider, for us to appeal on government to really address our issues today.
Something new, but still something kind of old, because you have mentioned those 3 points. Also, of course, when I talked to you about it, do you think, I guess, the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdowns, the multiple lockdowns we've experienced, was a missed opportunity for the government to work on these transportation issues?
Absolutely. I had this conversation with Jackie Manabat a few months back, and that's precisely what we said. During the lockdown, the government could have taken the opportunity to introduce sufficient and the correct type of permanent protected bike lanes. The government could have taken that opportunity to have had this conversation with the transport sector and address their issues. If you remember, Denise, it wasn't just a wanton suspension of public transport that happened. It also impacted the welfare of the transport sector, where we saw images of GP drivers begging for money in the streets. And, the last 2 years could have been an opportunity to address these long overdue issues, but also to introduce necessary infrastructure to promote active transportation. And it's not as if we need to introduce brand new legislation. The age-old National Building Code already prescribes a minimum size of sidewalks. We have sufficient policies, like the National Transport Policy, that lays down the standards for creating brand new roads, even directives by government in terms of implementing bike lanes. And so it is really up to the government now to take action on a lot of these things and really address the issues that we are facing today, at the same time that we are preparing for requirements in the future.
Now that, Ira, that urgency couldn't come any sooner, as it is, of course, the holiday season, the holiday rush. Now, best case scenario is, of course, the government finally addresses these issues. But what's the worst case scenario? If this keeps worsening every year, God forbid, every time we talk, how will this affect the productivity of Filipinos in being able to, of course, deliver excellence in their work, or also, of course, their holistic development?
When we started our advocacy in 2018, when we were looking at people walking on the railways of MRT, when it was breaking down, when people were climbing through windows of buses just to be able to get a ride, we had no idea that things could possibly get any worse. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. And so I can imagine a scenario where our economy will really break down. Our cities would literally come to a halt, because mobility of everybody is hampered. And so it's not just about mobility as an issue, but it will also affect businesses. It will also affect education. It will affect our welfare as people. Cities are built for us to be able to tap into opportunities, and mobility is that factor that allows people in cities to tap into these opportunities. And so if remain unaddressed, I can just imagine that we will be expecting a lot of missed opportunities for our cities and for our citizens.
Well, I hope things do get better and that we will have new things to talk about the next time you come in the show. AltMobility PH Director Ira Cruz, thank you so much, Ira.
Looking forward to that, Denise. Bye-bye.